feel powerful. Order. Ruth Jones to move the motion.
Thank you, Ms Jardine, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship again today, and I want to say thank you to the Backbench Business Committee for allowing this debate on fur today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to lead the debate on such an important topic as the UK's continuing trade in animal fur and in relation to my fur import and sale bill. To explain the problem with fur, I'd like to start with a true story about a man, a dog and a fox. The man was a prominent leader in the international fur industry and had spent 10 years of his professional career defending the fur trade against accusations of cruelty and working to try to get designers to use fur in their collections. He had increasingly found this to be an uphill struggle. One of his roles in the fur industry was promoting welfare standards on fur farms, and this saw him travel to fur farms around the world. He found himself one day on a fur farm in Poland. On this farm, around 1,000 foxes spent every day of their lives in wire cages, only a little bigger than they were, around 1 metre square, the rough equivalent of a person living their whole life in a phone box. The rows of cages stretched as far as he could see, some animals spinning in desperate circles, a sign of mental collapse, others just slumped in hopelessness, heaps on the floor in wire mesh floors, all waiting for the day they will be electrocuted to be turned into a coat trim or perhaps a bobble hat. As the man toured the farm with the Polish industry bosses, he locked eyes unexpectedly with a fox. She had beautiful silvery grey fur, a white stripe down the middle of her nose and shiny hazel eyes. Quite without meaning to, he connected with her, and her eyes told him something. Returning home to the UK the next day, the man was greeted by his adoring Labrador, Barney. After the enthusiastic wagging had subsided, the man looked at Barney and Barney looked back, eyes full of love, optimism and energy. In that moment, the man saw what he'd been missing for years, the connection between these two sentient beings. He realised if anyone tried to do this to his Barney, what the fur industry was doing to millions of foxes, he would do everything in his power to stop it and help him. And in that moment, he decided he could no longer defend the indefensible, and he resigned from working for the fur trade. But he didn't just slip off into obscurity. Mike Moser, because that's who it was, approached the anti-fur campaigner Claire Bass at Humane World for Animals and explained his change of heart and mind and offered his insights and services in their campaign for a fur-free Britain. I have much respect for Mike, who joins us here today, and I'm sure that honourable members will agree that his powerful testimony against the fur trade is worth bringing to the attention of the House. Mike says, over time, I realised that whatever soundbites we devised to reassure consumers, retailers and politicians, neither welfare regulations nor any industry certification scheme would ever change the reality of these animals being stuck in tiny wire cages for their entire lives. I'm grateful for the strong support of so many honourable members for my fur import and sales bill. This bill is simple in principle, modest in scope and overwhelming in its justification. It would end the import of animal fur into Great Britain and prohibit the sale of new fur products in England while allowing appropriate exemptions and, of course, respecting devolved competence. In doing so, it would finally bring our law into line with our values. Because the truth is, Ms Jardine, the United Kingdom banned fur farming more than 20 years ago because we recognised it inherently inhumane. Yet by allowing tens of millions of pounds worth of fur to be imported here, we continue to be complicit in exactly the same cruelty overseas. That is a double standard that my bill seeks to end. I will, of course.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. And I know she would agree that fur is not just a byproduct, but a product that relies on animals being caged, confined and killed solely for their pelts, and that a ban on the import and sale of fur is a proportionate measure consistent with our ethics that would end our complicity in wholly unnecessarily suffering of our animals.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and I couldn't have put it better myself. So let's be clear what the fur trade involves. Each year, tens of millions of animals, including foxes, mink and raccoon, they're still trapped solely for fashion. On farms, they are confined for their entire lives in barren wire cages, unable to run, dig, swim, or express the most basic natural behaviours. Investigations on fur farms by organisations including Humane World for Animals repeatedly show animals suffering extreme physical and psychological stress, self-mutilation, cannibalism, untreated injuries before being killed at around 8 months of age, commonly by gassing or anal electrocution. Importantly, this suffering is well documented on farms that operate under the industry's welfare assurance scheme. Animals trapped for their fur can be caught in maiming metal chewed traps and left trapped for days with no food or water, exposed to the elements before a trapper finally returns to kill them. Extremely disturbing footage from undercover investigations in trapping in the US, conducted by Born Free USA, Respect for Animals and Humane World for Animals, shows trappers laughing as they bludgeon trapped animals to death and drown a terrified raccoon in a river. There is no such thing as humanely produced or responsibly sourced fur. The European Food Safety Authority recently published scientific opinion on the welfare of animals kept for fur production, and this clearly shows that the needs of animals such as mink, foxes, raccoons, dogs and chinchillas cannot be met on fur farms. The report's authors conclude that suffering cannot be prevented or substantially mitigated in current fur farming systems, which include so-called high welfare farms in Europe. Underscoring this, Mike Moser has publicly stated, "Having spent so many years working to defend the fur industry, it is now my strongly held view that while animals continue to be caged, no improvement to nor strengthening of fur farming regulations will ever prevent the welfare problems and cruelty that are systemic to the fur industry. There is no meaningful dispute that the fur trade is suffering written through its DNA. The UK, under a Labour government, recognised this when it first became the first country in the world to ban fur farming on animal welfare grounds. Since then, 23 countries have followed our lead. So the question today is before us is not whether fur farming is cruel. Parliament's already answered that question. The question is, if it is too cruel to produce here, why are we allowing it to be sold here? Despite our domestic ban, HMRC records show that the UK imports between £30 and £40 million worth of fur every year, equivalent to as many as 1 million animals killed annually to be traded here. While fur is extremely unpopular in Britain's shops and wardrobes, and only 3% of people say that they would wear fur, by the fur trade's own admission, the UK is a trading hub for the global industry. Banning fur imports would remove that vital piece of the industry's trading landscape and so hasten its demise. The case for a ban on fur imports and sales does not rest on animal welfare alone. Leading virologists around the world, including from Imperial College London, have warned that fur farms represent a serious threat to public health, describing them as an important transmission hub for viral zoonoses, equivalent to other high-risk practices like the bushmeat trade and live animal markets. They are a ticking time bomb for the next pandemic to occur. Hundreds of outbreaks of SARS, CoV-2 and highly pathogenic avian influenza have been recorded on fur farms in recent years. Viruses have mutated, spread rapidly between animals and been passed back to humans. During the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of animals were culled and fur farms shut down in several countries on public health grounds. Yet the industry continues. At a time when Parliament speaks about resilience, prevention and learning the lessons of COVID, continuing to be complicit in the public health risk of the global fur trade is indefensible. In its death throes, the fur industry has attempted to rebrand itself as environmentally friendly, but these claims do not withstand scrutiny. Fur production is resource intensive, highly polluting and carbon heavy. 1 kilogram of mink fur generates around 7 times more greenhouse gas emissions than 1 kilogram of beef and requires over half a tonne of meat feed. Fur processing also relies on toxic and carcinogenic chemicals to prevent decomposition and to dye the fur. Meanwhile, faux fur technology has advanced rapidly, with British designers using recycled and plant-based materials, many of them biodegradable. Ending the UK fur trade will support innovation, not greenwashing. The public are far ahead of the law on this issue. More than 3/4 of voters believe that when a farming practice is banned in the UK for cruelty, imports produced in the same way should also be banned. More than 1.5 million people have signed petitions calling for a ban, and over 200 MPs and peers support the campaign for a fur-free Britain, led by Humane World for Animals, Four Paws, the RSPCA, Labour Animal Welfare Society, PETA, Animal Aid and others. The vast majority of British retailers and designers have moved on from fur. Major brands and British department stores do not sell fur. In 2023, the British Fashion Council banned real fur from London Fashion Week. It's time our laws caught up with where our society is on the issue of fur. Some honourable members may wonder about the economic impact of a ban. And on this, I can provide assurance that the fur trade is already in steep decline. Globally, fur production has fallen by over 85% in the last decade. In the UK, the sector is tiny, employing only a few dozen people, many of whom already trade in alternative materials or services. There's also a clear consumer protection benefit to a ban. A few years ago, there was a high-profile coverage by the BBC, Sky News and others, exposing the scandal of fake faux fur, real fur being sold as fake fur. This problem has improved thanks to the efforts of EFRA, the Advertising Standards Authority, Trading Standards and Humane World for Animals, but it's still possible today to buy a bobble hat on a popular online retailer that is described as fake fur, but is in fact made of fox. This leaves would-be ethical consumers unable to buy with confidence in accordance with their values. A ban on all animal fur would simplify and strengthen enforcement and restore confidence. The evidence for this ban has been gathered, tested and confirmed for years. Parliamentary inquiries have been held. A government call for evidence attracted tens of thousands of responses, with over 96% agreeing it is wrong to kill animals for fur. Public opinion is clear. Scientific evidence is clear. The economic case is clear. Ms Jardine, I was proud when in opposition Labour's Shadow DEFRA minister stated support for a fur-free Britain. We now have an opportunity to make that a reality. So I would like to press the Minister today for any details she may be able to provide on the timing of the publication of the results of the Government's 2021 call for evidence on the fur trade, as well as the report on the UK fur trade by the DEFRA Animal Welfare Committee. I would also like to place on record my hope that processed animal fur will be left squarely outside the scope of the UK's ongoing SPS negotiations with the EU. As an important agreement to smooth trade in agri-food, it should not concern itself with trying to reach a common position on trade in furry bobble hats, any more than it should worry about trade in leather shoes. I am grateful to the Minister for the formation of a working group to address the UK fur trade, and I hope that it can conduct its business in the coming months with haste, followed by political will to act in accordance with public opinion and end the UK's cruel, outdated and unnecessary fur trade. Thank you.
Hear, hear. I remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called in a debate. The question is that this House has considered the import and sale of fur and related products. Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I would like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Newport Western, Aylwyn, for bringing this important debate. The United Kingdom, as we've heard, and I think we will be repeating a number of the key issues and reasons why import of fur products should be banned in the UK, and rightly so. I think the points are absolutely crucial. So, as we've heard, the United Kingdom banned fur farming over 2 decades ago because Parliament rightly recognised the extreme and unnecessary cruelty it inflicts upon defenceless animals. Yet today we continue to allow the import and sale of fur products produced using precisely the same methods that we judged unacceptable within our own borders. That contradiction is simply impossible to defend. If fur farming is rightfully recognised as too cruel to permit in this country, then it also should be considered too cruel to profit from its proceeds. Every year, tens of millions of animals across the world are confined to small wire cages or trapped in the wild solely for their fur. An estimate of 85 to 100 million animals globally are farmed or trapped for this, the supply of their fur. Investigations and scientific assessments have repeatedly shown that such conditions fail to meet animals' most basic behavioural needs and cause severe, inhumane suffering. However, do we really need scientific studies to prove that the way that the fur farming is done, the way animals are trapped, is inhumane and causes suffering. Of course, we do not. We can see it with our own eyes. These are wild animals who should be allowed to roam free in the wild, but are instead kept locked up within tiny cages in deplorable conditions. Once their pelts are ready, they are gassed or anally electrocuted, as we've heard. And many of these animals are killed about the age of 1, when their pelts are in their prime. This is the real nature of the system that continues to supply the global fur trade. And while the UK banned fur farming domestically, we remain inextricably connected to the system through the import of furs. As we've heard from my honourable friend, HMRC figures show that the UK continues to import around 30 to 40 million pounds worth of fur products each year, which equate to an estimate of around 1 million animals annually. That raises an obvious ethical question. I will give way.
I thank my friend for giving way. I was really pleased last year to bring in a private member's bill to stop puppy smuggling, specifically with the issue of ear cropping. Now, it's been illegal to crop a dog's ears in the UK since 2006, but it was legal to import dogs with cropped ears. We thought it was unacceptable to do that in the UK on welfare grounds, but we knew people were getting around the loophole by acquiring cropped-eared dogs from abroad. This seems exactly the same thing. Does my honourable friend agree to me that we should not be offshoring our ethical animal welfare issues by banning something in the UK, then allowing people to get those products from abroad? If we think it's unacceptable here, it should be unacceptable anywhere.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I completely agree, and I was happy to support his private member's bill and speak in that as well. Anything that we deem unacceptable or cruel in our country is unacceptable or cruel wherever it's done. And we should not be helping to perpetuate that cruelty elsewhere around the world. So the ethical question that we raise is, why are we comfortable, as my honourable friend just said, outsourcing animal cruelty to other countries simply because it occurs beyond our shores? Increasingly, the general public are recognising the incoherence of this perverse position. There has been a profound sea change in British public attitudes towards the fur trade. A YouGov survey found that 93% of people in the UK do not wear real fur, and as we've heard, 97% would never wear real fur. And while a 2023 poll found that 77% believe that when a type of farming is banned in the UK for being too cruel, we should also ban imports of products produced the same way overseas. This is an easy win for this government to implement a policy that is wildly popular, and the cruelty is accepted by the people of our country, and it's unacceptable. In other words, this is not a controversial position amongst the public. It reflects a widely shared, common sense position that the fur trade is outdated and unnecessary in the 21st century. The economic case for maintaining the trade is also increasingly weak. The UK fur market has been in steep decline over the past decade. Fur imports now represent just a tiny fraction of the UK's overall clothing trade. Many major brands and global luxury houses have already turned away from fur entirely, and London Fashion Week itself banned its use in 2023. So the direction of travel is clear. The industry is dying, consumer demand is collapsing, and alternatives are wildly unavailable. There are also environmental and public health concerns that have also been raised associated with fur production. Studies have shown that the carbon footprint of fur significantly exceeds that of many other materials used in fashion, given the intensive farming of carnivorous wild animals and the process it entails. Meanwhile, outbreaks of SARS and avian influenza on fur farms have highlighted the risks such facilities can pose as potential transmission hubs for zoonotic disease, thereby increasing the likelihood of future pandemics. Taken together, the case for a more comprehensive ban is compelling. I therefore welcome the efforts of colleagues who have brought forward proposals to prohibit the import and sale of fur in the United Kingdom, including the Fur Import and Sale Private Members Bill introduced by my honourable friend. Such legislation would close the obvious loophole that currently exists in our animal welfare framework. The UK was once a global leader in banning fur farming. Many other countries followed our example. We now have an opportunity to lead again by ending our association with a trade that is morally repugnant, environmentally harmful, economically marginal, and overwhelmingly rejected by the public. There is no such thing as humane fur farming wherever it takes place, and it must end now.
Let's go. Debate, and I do congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Newport West and Islwyn, for all the work she does in this space in championing animal rights. And while she spoke about the fur in a bobble hat, I'm going to be talking about the Kingsguard caps and the use of black bear pelts and the government's commitment to ending of their use. And I have to say that this has been a commitment for decades, and yet we are still seeing the imports of the furs of black bears. And whilst the MOD have believed in the past that the black bears comes from licensed culls, the Canadian authorities have denied this, both at federal and at provincial government levels, saying there is no such thing as the licensed culls, and therefore we know that it is coming from a source of trophy hunters, something that this House has campaigned on time and time again, and we really must ensure that under this Labour government we see an end to trophy hunting. But coming back to the issue of the Kingsguard's cats, we know that this trade through the work of these trophy hunters leads bears who are killed in a random way to die often slowly, in much distress, through blood loss, infection, starvation, and for those cubs who lose their mums, their future is perilous. So we need to ensure that these pelts then don't move on to the auction houses from which the MOD purchase them. Only part then of the pelts are actually used, the bits with the longer fur. The rest is simply thrown away. It's costing us as taxpayers, and this is what I find so repugnant, £1 million over the last decade. 1,000 bears have been killed to put on the heads of soldiers. What on earth is that all about? So when there is faux fur alternatives available, which have been developed with great skill, we need to ensure that we are using the faux fur. It mimics and performs, and even outperforms, that of real fur with regards to waterproofing, and it's lighter, it dries quicker, and it springs back and into shape. It uses and recycles the chemicals and water used in their making, and ensures that it's environmentally friendly as well as ethical. It has uniformity of colour and fur length, and is also developed, or can be developed, from a bio-based fabric. The MOD must stop placing these pelts on the heads of soldiers, and the public, 75% plus of the public, support this. So it is an obvious move, and therefore I call on all honourable members present to sign my EDM 2907, to support this call, and to ensure that we end the use of this cruel method of parading ceremoniously these dead animals through our streets and standing outside Buckingham Palace. I find it shameful, and therefore it must end. So I'm going to ask the Minister what steps she is taking to end the use of bear skins, and what discussions she's had with the MOD concerning that. If she will halt the purchase of any further pelts from this point on, and pending a review, and ensure that she invests herself in ensuring that we're using faux fur as an alternative to the bear skin pelts. I'm sure there would be nobody who would have any disagreement with such a move, but what an improvement that would be. It has no bearing, these pelts, on the safety of soldiers, but restores safety to bears. And therefore our pride will come from knowing that animals haven't been used to parade and to be placed on the head of our soldiers.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, a real pleasure to serve under your chairship, and thank you again for being here. A big thank you to the Honourable Lady for Newport West and Islin for highlighting this topic, which is so important to so many of my constituents. I get regular comments and queries about it. I put it on record. It is wrong to kill an animal for its fur. And that's where I start from, as the Honourable Lady start from, and where others who have spoken and indeed will speak will say the same thing. Fur farming has been banned first in England and Wales, and closely followed by similar legislation in the Northern Ireland Assembly and Scottish Parliament in 2003. And I can well remember in my former role as a member of the Legislative Assembly voting for this legislative change that the Honourable Lady is putting forward today. I put forward my support for the Honourable Lady's quest today very clearly. I'm a country sports enthusiast. I firmly believe that any animal that is killed should be used in its entirety and not bred for this purpose. On the rare occasion that I do get to shoot, which is probably twice a year, usually on Boxing Day and New Year's Day, all of my neighbours all expect to see game hanging from their doors. Usually I leave the pheasants and the ducks and the pigeons as we acquire them. And all my neighbours look forward to that because they enjoy the meals that the pheasants and the ducks would develop and would be then for a meal for the whole family, and which they can enjoy. My former colleague Baroness Foster from the other place, who was also the First Minister in the Northern Ireland Assembly, and my honourable friend and colleague, the Honourable Member for Antrim East, also as ministers, as they were in the Assembly, were probably at least once a month in receipt of pheasants and ducks as well. And again, they both enjoyed them. The point I'm making is there is a role for harvesting the birds that we rear and that nature produces, and that then we can enjoy. But every possible effort was made to ensure that the birds were used in their entirety as is right and proper. I supported the ban over 20 years ago, and I continue to support it now. It seems a little incongruous that we have allowed for so long the backdoor entrance of fur that could not be processed here and yet has been processed elsewhere. And the principle of the Honourable Lady for Newport West and Islin is very clear. If there's a loophole, then let's close that loophole and let's make sure that it can't happen. And yet the fact that it is shipped in, and whilst I'm not an advocate for the willful destruction of any antique pieces, in other words, those furs that have been passed down generationally, to be supporting the trade to simply take place elsewhere defeats the very efforts that have been made by us in this United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And for this reason, I believe it is past time that we close the loophole and the gap and disallow the importation of this fur for sale. And I have no difficulty in believing that I speak for the large majority of my constituents who regularly on this subject matter make it known to me and when I offer the support. So again, I thank the Honourable Lady for Newport West and Islin. She's been a doughty campaigner. The word doughty is used often, but for the Honourable Lady it describes her well, and we congratulate her for her diligence in raising this matter. I do hope that the Minister will support the bill and the intentions of what the Honourable Lady and this House today is putting forward, and enable a smooth and effective passage through Parliament. We all know that time in the Chamber and the passage of bills is precious, but I also think we can all agree that this is one that is deserving of time and attention to get it right, to ensure that the entire United Kingdom of Great Britain will have the same rules, including Northern Ireland, where I represent, and where the intentions and the request is similar. And to also answer the questions for those military uniforms that use it, the Honourable Lady for York put forward a case very, very clearly. I've seen her EDM on the Honourable Lady's EDM on the sheet today, and I've added my name to that as well. Work needs to be done to get it right, but I believe the desire is here in Westminster Hall today in Parliament as a whole. So I look forward to the Minister's help to progress this, to prevent the import and the sale of fur and other products. And again, to everybody, well done. And to the objectives that we're all trying to achieve is one that's worthy, one that our constituents want, and one that they, this House, hopefully will endorse in its entirety. Thank you.
Steve Witherden.
Chairship, Ms Jardine. I thank my honourable friend, the member for Newport West and East Loyne, for securing this debate and for all the dedicated work she has carried out to bring us closer to achieving a truly fur-free Britain. The UK was the first country in the world to ban fur farming, and this is a stance we should rightly be proud of. It has set an example for others to follow, and since our decision, 21 other countries have taken the same step to end fur production. However, we still permit the import and sale of fur and fur products, effectively outsourcing the cruelty. Our position should be consistent. If fur is too cruel to farm here, then it's too cruel, full stop. I strongly support my honourable friend's fur bill, which would prohibit the importation and sale of fur in the UK. The case for ending the UK's role in supporting the fur industry, whether directly or indirectly, rests on three central arguments: cruelty, environmental harm, and the risks to human health. Firstly, the cruelty. There's no such thing as humane fur farming. It's estimated that more than 100 million animals are killed each year worldwide solely for their fur. Around 95% of fur on the global market comes from fur farms where animals spend their entire lives in cages, typically only slightly larger than the animals themselves. Such conditions subject them to enormous mental and physical suffering. Many animals exhibit signs of severe distress, including self-mutilation and cannibalism, because the environment is so unnatural and restrictive. Secondly, fur farming is exceptionally damaging to the environment. The carbon footprint associated with producing animal fur is shockingly high. For example, producing 1 kilogram of mink fur creates 7 times more emissions than producing 1 kilogram of beef. On top of this, the tanning and dyeing processes rely on a cocktail of toxic and carcinogenic chemicals to prevent the pelts from decomposing. Finally, the industry poses risks to human health. In recent years, there have been hundreds of outbreaks of SARS and highly pathogenic avian influenza on fur farms, clearly illustrating the threat this industry presents to public health. And let's not forget that during the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of animals were culled and fur farming was halted in several countries. Yet now the practice continues. A ban on the import and sale of fur would strengthen the UK's reputation as a global leader on animal welfare and take a firm stance on the environmental and health concerns associated with this trade. It would set an important precedent for other countries, just as our original ban on fur farming did. We now have a clear opportunity to end this double standard, and I urge the government to support the member for Newport West and East Loyne's bill. Diolch yn fawr.
Irene Campbell.
It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Ms Jardine. I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Newport West and East Loyne, for the excellent work she has done and continues to do in relation to this important campaign, and I fully support her fur import and sale bill, and I'm pleased to say that constituents have actually highlighted today's debate to me and asked me to attend. I would have attended anyway, as my honourable friend knows. So I shall keep this brief, as many points have already been raised, and I'm going to focus on fashion. Over 1,600 companies are registered as fur-free retailer, including leading British designers like Stella McCartney, who pioneer innovative faux fur alternatives. And we have heard already today how easily faux fur can be produced and used. In 2023, as we have heard, the British Fashion Council also introduced a ban on real fur at London Fashion Week. This has continued, and these moves are very much welcomed. So farming for fur is humane, as we have heard. The fur trade is intense and the animals are kept in barren wire cages with no ability to act out their natural behaviours. Most cages, as we've heard, are only 1 square metre larger than the animals themselves. An investigation by animal welfare charities have found animals experience horrific physical and mental suffering, including, as we've heard, self-mutilation and, at times, cannibalism. A Labour government introduced legislation in 2000 and implemented a fur farming ban here in 2002, making the UK the first country in the world to take this step. Now 21 other countries have also ended fur production, and I hope more will follow. Fortunately, the fur industry is declining and far fewer people are wearing real fur. I mean, years ago, people would even wear dead foxes around their shoulders, although I have no idea why anyone would have wanted to do this. A fur ban is a necessary step in ending this cruel and unnecessary practice. A UK ban on fur import and sales would send a hugely important global message to those countries still engaged in this cruel and dangerous fur farming, thus protecting public health and animal welfare, which should surely be more important than fur for fashion, as we have many alternatives. I very much welcome today's debate and I look forward to hearing the Minister's response.
Thank you.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank you very much, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I'd like to start by thanking the honourable friend for Newport West and East Loyne on securing today's debate and for all her work to bring her private member's bill to the House. It builds on the work and stands in a tradition of a private member's bill brought by the Right Honourable Member for Liverpool Garston in 1999, which paved the way just 1 year later for the banning of fur farming within the UK. And I welcome the government's animal welfare strategy and the government's commitment to looking through the working group at the issue of fur. But we should be clear in this place that there is no such thing as cruelty-free fur. As others have said already in this debate, we have banned the domestic farming of fur since the year 2000, and it does raise the obvious question, why is it that we should be content for fur to be imported from overseas when we believe that it should not be produced on our own shores? It is the inherently cruel fruit of an immoral trade. And the European Food and Safety Authority published an exhaustive scientific study last year. It found serious harm to species such as fox and mink across a range of issues, including severe stress and self-harming. The ESFA was clear. Most of these welfare consequences cannot be prevented or substantially mitigated in the current system, that is, the cage system. In the time we have today, I think it is important to address some of the claims which are put forward by the proponents and industry interests who defend fur farming. A ban on imports would not be without precedent. In fact, in the year 2009, the European Union put in place a ban on seal product imports, primarily from Canada, and I had the privilege at the time to work with the Humane Society International, now Humane World for Animals, to challenge the legal attempts to overturn that ban, and I'm very glad to say that it remains in place. And under the World Trade Organisation's rule, the GATT Treaty Article 20 clearly allows for bans on the imports of products on basis necessary to, and I quote, protect public morals and animal health. Nor, as others have said, is fur a natural product. In fact, so-called real fur is so heavily treated by carcinogenic chemicals that it produces 7 times the carbon as faux fur. And the other claim which has been made by organisations such as the International Fur Federation, which is headquartered in the UK, not a short walk from where we are debating today, and the British Fur Trade Federation Association, is that the indigenous communities depend for their economic livelihoods on these exports. This is a complete canard. The overwhelming majority of fur imports are from European factory-farmed locations, and imports from the Canadian hunt, which in itself is not today dominated by Indigenous communities, represents a minuscule fraction of UK fur imports. It's also necessary to address the so-called certification schemes which are promoted by those organisations such as Welfare and Fur Mark. Now, the fur industry knows that the UK public is repelled by fur farming, so they are trying to hide the cruel reality behind these sanitising but meaningless labels. The labels do not challenge the cage system which the ESFA found was incompatible with animal welfare standards. These labels create the appearance of oversight while leaving the practices themselves unabated. It is a very 21st century form of greenwashing of archaic butchery. Ms Jardine, in conclusion, when the Minister responds, I hope that she'll be able to give the House an update on the timelines that the working group will be conducting its business to, and also ask that the government makes it clear that it does not accept the validity of these self-interested, industry-promoted certification schemes. I'd like to place on record an appreciation of one of the organisations which has led the campaign against the fur trade in the UK over many years, which is Respect for Animals, originally founded as Lynx by Mark Glover and Nikki Brooks, and today joined by Richard Bissett. They do outstanding work. 3 years after the election of the last Labour government, a law was passed to ban the domestic farming of fur. I hope that we can work to a similar timetable to end the import of fur products under this Labour government, complete with its commitment to animal welfare. Thank you, Ms Jardine.
Adam Joji.
Thank you very much, Ms Jardine. I hadn't planned to speak. I was only coming to show my support for my honourable friend for Newport West and Isloin, and then I saw that the time, Ms Jardine, is such that I was able to make a brief contribution, so I shall do so with your indulging. And can I say, Ms Jardine, it's excellent to see you presiding up there over us this morning, the first time I've spoken with you in the chair. I pay tribute to my honourable friend from Newport West and Isloin for her consistency and her tenacity on these issues, and I thank all colleagues for the contributions that they've made so far in this debate, Ms Jardine. It hasn't been political, which I think speaks to the importance of this issue, although I note we haven't heard from the two opposition front benches, but I feel sure that they will approach this debate as all others have. Now, I, Ms Jardine, feel like I'm living in a parallel universe in a previous life, sitting in a room talking DEFRA, particularly animal welfare, with my honourable friend, with various stakeholders and campaigners, and a now shadow, but then DEFRA Minister in the member for Keighley, talk about Back to the Future, Madam Miss Jardine. But I'm here to support my honourable friend, and I do her bill too. I'm from a community in Newcastle Lyme where the vast majority of my constituents, judging from my inbox on a weekly basis, can be best described as animal lovers. And we have a real opportunity to make a meaningful difference to millions of animals and stop them being forced to endure mental and physical anguish that none of us would wish on our worst enemies. Now, the good people of our United Kingdom, Ms Jardine, do not support the fur trade, and we know that many designers and retailers have got with the picture too. Now, I hope my honourable friend, the Minister, will appreciate the significance of her sitting in this debate today, because it was her honourable twin, the member for Liverpool Garston, who... Excuse me, right honourable, forgive me. I should have known. Two successful twins. The right honourable member for Liverpool Garston, who brought the fur ban back in when I was at primary school, Ms Jardine, and so it now falls to it now falls to another eagle to get the job done and deliver the fur-free Britain that we all want to see. Now, Chair, I will happily give way to my right honourable friend.
I'm not right honourable.
Oh.
My twin is, but I'm not, just to put that on the record. I thank him for remembering the history of this, but I wonder if he can imagine the kind of pressure that I might be under on this issue subsequently.
I'm grateful to the Minister. I think it's the first time a Minister's intervened on me, so first time for everything. A moment we won't forget, Ms Jardine. But I'm the eldest of three, so I can well understand the pressures that siblings apply to you. Let me tell you, they're both younger than me, so they have particular views on the state of the world today and how I may approach some of those issues. But I feel sure that our right honourable friend will continue to hold the Minister to account and help her get to exactly the right place to deliver the fur-free Britain that we all want to see. Chair, can I thank all those who work in, day out on animal welfare issues. Many of them here, I see Danielle and Sonal and others, many of whom I spoke to actually more than my own siblings when I worked for the Honourable Member for Newport West and Isloin in years gone by. And, Ms Jardine, finally, can I thank my Honourable friend for Newport West? I'm glad that all the speeches I wrote all those years ago were put to good use, and I'm pleased on behalf of my constituents in Newcastle Lyme to be here today to show my support for this debate, for her bill and for delivering the fur-free Britain we all want to see.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's an honour to serve with you in the chair this morning, and I'd also like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Newport West and Isloin on securing this important debate, and I also pay tribute to her tireless campaigning on animal rights. It's a pleasure to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrats today. We have a track record of animal rights advocacy. We are clear that the fur trade should have no place in this country, with some of the highest standards of animal welfare anywhere in the world. Yet today's debate has outlined a glaring contradiction. We have banned the cruelty at home, yet by continuing to outsource fur from overseas, we remain wholly complicit in this unnecessary suffering. It is understandable that over 3/4 of British public want to see this double standard ended for good. And I commend the work of the Fur-Free Britain Coalition in mobilising such strong public opinion on the topic of fur. The Liberal Democrats support the protection of animal rights and welfare, both domestically and internationally. The previous Conservative government wrongly pivoted on its decision to scrap the planned ban on import of fur, and we now call on this government to enact the comprehensive ban on the import of sale of fur and fur-related products once and for all, helping to maintain the UK as a global leader in the promotion of animal welfare. Ms Jardine, the moral arguments have been well rehearsed by many honourable and right honourable members here today, and they are full of merit. But I'd also like to evaluate some of the arguments put forward by the fur industry against a ban. The British Fur Trade Association has stated that a ban would not improve animal welfare standards, would result in illegal fur imports, and would be unenforceable and lead to job losses. In addition, they argue it raises concerns that would break World Trade Organization rules. The association has proposed a 5-point plan for the government, including improved labelling of fur products. But let me be clear, keeping animals in cages for their whole lives inevitably leads to a variety of physical and psychological health problems. So clearly, the fur industry certification schemes incorporate a high tolerance for poor welfare. Under the welfare approach used within Furmark, farms can retain accreditation even when significant levels of illness and injury persists. The scheme allows alarm thresholds, under which no serious action is triggered. How we treat animals is a reflection on who we are as a society. The UK is a nation of animal lovers, and we should be proud of the action that we have taken to lead the world in upholding some of the highest animal welfare standards. When we take a stand, others follow. Just take the ban on fur farming implemented in the early 2000s. Since this, over 20 countries have followed suit. This is something to be proud of, and an opportunity to extend this legacy further now. It's disappointing that there have been claims that a ban would result in job losses and damage the economy. A recent report by WPI Economics on behalf of the Humane World revealed that this is simply not the case. The fur trade's contribution to the UK economy is very limited. It has shown significant decline over recent years. The value of international fur exports and imports in the UK in 2023 has fallen by nearly 50% and 39% respectively since 2018, while data from the Business Register Employment Survey shows that the number of people employed in the sector is declining sharply. In 2022-2023, there were only 35 people employed in the sector. Ms Jardine, there is also a growing evidence that a ban is enforceable under WTO rules. The 2014 landmark WTO ruling on the EU's ban on the import of sealskins shows that WTO rules permit restrictions on imports based on ethical concerns. While in March 2021, the UK Trade and Agricultural Commission recommended that the UK should show world leadership in embedding animal welfare into international trade policy and to help to raise standards worldwide. This is what the public want, with polling suggesting that 77% of the public back a ban on the import and sale of fur and fur-related products, while 96% of respondents to the call for evidence under the last government strongly agree that it is wrong for animals to be killed for their fur. In the build-up to this debate today, many of my constituents in Glastonbury and Somerton wrote to me outlining their support for a ban, all united in their belief it's time to end this cruel, outdated and unnecessary trade. And I agree with them. I want to underscore that the global fur trade, of which the UK is still a part of, is not just a problem for animals, it's also a serious public health risk. The interface between humans and millions of intensively kept and traded animals is giving rise to an era of unprecedented zoonotic disease threats, and fur farming sits squarely in that danger zone. Professor Edward Holmes, the evolutionary biologist and virologist from University of Sydney, said of the fur trade, "I think that this trade is a roll of the dice. We're exposing ourselves to viruses that come from wildlife, which is an obvious route for the next pandemic to occur. Fur farms present a clear epidemic or pandemic risk." And crucially, this is not a hypothetical risk. Reports and official responses in Europe have shown outbreaks of highly pathogenic avian influenza affecting fur-bearing animals on farms, and public health and biosecurity measures are not consistently implemented in practice. So we must heed virologists' warnings and must not sleepwalk into another global pandemic. Ms Jardine, I do not want to take this opportunity. I do want to, rather, take this opportunity to recognise some of the government's progress on this issue. And I was pleased to see the government publish the results of the previous government's call for evidence on the fur trade. And I also want to welcome the recently launched animal welfare strategy for England that promises the highest jump in welfare in a generation. But it's clear that trade policy must run hand in hand with domestic welfare action. If we do not do this, we only risk offshoring animal cruelty abroad. We must not import goods that are allowed to be produced, that are not allowed to be produced in this country. And we must also extend to food products produced abroad at standards that would be illegal for British farmers to operate. The Liberal Democrats want to see minimum standards for all imported food to meet UK animal welfare standards, and we must ensure that no animal product that would be illegal to produce in the UK can be sold in Britain, including foie gras. Liberal Democrats have also urged the government to sign the phytosanitary agreement with the EU as soon as possible, and alignment on standards and quality. Part of these discussions will likely focus on the import of fur, but I believe that given it is not an agri-food commodity, incorporating it into the SBS agreement would only serve to complicate the matter unnecessarily and would serve to delay the process. Now, I know the Minister has previously indicated her support for a ban, along with many Cabinet Ministers, many members of her own party and most of Parliament. There is a cross-party consensus on this issue, and it was shameful that the previous Conservative government reversed its commitment to action. So this government must now do the right thing and take this opportunity once again to make Britain a global trailblazer and ban the sale of import and fur-related products as soon as possible. The fur trade has no place in a country with such high standards of animal welfare. And to conclude, Ms Jardine, it is hypocritical to allow the import and sale of real fur from abroad. Liberal Democrats support the protection of animal rights and welfare, both domestically and internationally. And we call on this government to enact the comprehensive ban of the import sale of fur and fur-related products once and for all, helping maintain the UK as a global leader in the sale and promotion of animal welfare. Thank you.
Opposition spokesperson Robbie Moore.
Thank you, Mrs Jardine, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I thank the Honourable Member for Newport West for securing today's debate. I know that she has been a tireless campaigner on this issue, both in her shadow position in the previous, before the last general election, and indeed in bringing forward private members' bills on this debate, and securing many Westminster Hall's debates on animal welfare issues. So I would like to congratulate her on securing this important debate. And quite rightly, as all members have indicated in their contributions, fur farming has been banned in England and Wales since 2000, and legislation prohibits the keeping and breeding of animals solely or primarily for the slaughter and their value of fur. But that was 26 years ago, and whilst the Honourable Member has raised the issues of fairness effectively, whilst we have a ban in place here, we're still enabling imports to be coming into this country for standards that don't meet us. We have not yet achieved a banning of imports, and that is something which I feel personally wholly unfair, inadequate, and needs to be explored. So what position do we currently see ourselves in today? There are several restrictions in place that seek to monitor and control how this trade can be carried out in the UK. There are some restrictions on some skin and fur products that may never be legally imported into the UK, including fur from cats and dogs, but we all acknowledge that that still does not go far enough. There are also established controls on fur from endangered species protected by the Convention on International Trade and Endangered Species, and imports from fur from wild animals caught using methods that are non-compliant with international humane trapping standards. But again, this does not go far enough. And under the Textile Products Regulations 2012 and EU regulations, which has now been assimilated into UK law, any textile product that contains real fur or other animal-derived materials must carry the following mandatory label: contains non-textile parts of animal origin. This wording must appear exactly as specified and must be clearly visible to consumers. The regulations require all textile products to display a label identifying their fibre content, including any fur, leather or bone. But I would argue that that is not adequate enough in its clarity to a consumer that is buying a product, and therefore does not go far enough. Many members in this debate have rightly contributed by saying that whilst we have banned imports here and created a direction in which other countries will follow, it is still offshoring our responsibility that imports are still able to be maintained, and therefore I'd urge the government to explore this route. Now we know that fur imports are decreasing. Under the previous administrations, animal welfare standards were increased, as we all know, and the volume of fur imported fell by 50% in 5 years. The trend is declining, and therefore, as a consumer and consumers buying imported fur, it is decreasing, and therefore the economics back a position of taking a much more stronger approach in terms of banning imported fur. A consultation was launched which sought the views on the fur market. The call for evidence received over 30,000 responses from businesses, representative bodies and individuals, demonstrating the strong public support in this interest. And it was good to see that the government has now published the responses from that. But I would like to understand from the Minister what the direction will be in terms of going forward in relation to that consultation that was carried out. In addition, the interest from businesses, it is clear that this is an issue that matters to the British public. A petition to ban fur imports was launched by the Free the Fur Free Britain campaign, receiving over 1.5 million signatories. And this issue has also been debated many a time in this place. We all acknowledge that this demonstrates a strong feeling from the British people that the import of fur should be banned. And I would like to clearly understand the government's position following the Animal Welfare Committee's report that was published following that petition. The government has also announced their animal welfare strategy in December of last year, with much of that to be welcomed. But I would like to ask specifically the Minister why that animal welfare strategy did not include a ban on fur imports, as had been previously indicated, that was something that the incoming Labour government would be willing to explore. And therefore, I'd also like to seek clarity from the government as to any potential time frame associated with any additional consultation that is likely to be announced on this issue, and what they will be doing in addition to the animal welfare strategy that has been announced into exploring this issue further. As has been commented, there has been much good work done from previous administrations, and indeed from an indication in the forthcoming animal welfare strategy about improving animal welfare generally in this country. It was picked up by one of the contributions in this place to do with ear cropping. We cannot be in a scenario where we are banning things that are happening in this country, but enabling effectively the equivalent product, whatever that may be, whether it's a food product or a live animal, or a product from a live animal to be coming in to this country that is simply banned or not at a level of animal welfare of expectation here. That is simply unfair, and therefore I'd like to push the Minister on what the government's position is in terms of timing in that regard going forward.
Thank you. Minister Dame Angela Eagle.
Thank you very much, Ms Jardine. It's a great pleasure to serve, I think, for the first time in this committee, in this hall, anyway, in Westminster Hall, under your chairmanship. I think we've had a consensus-driven debate, and I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Newport West and Isloin, for securing it. I also note that she's extremely busy today because she's got the 10-minute rule bill as well. And since that's about dealing with pets, we know at least she's got her speeches in the right order for her very busy day. And she obviously demonstrates with the work that she does how much she cares for animals, whatever context they're in, whether they're wild or domesticated or indeed livestock. And we've also heard that from her in the speech that she made today. She represents a deep vein of concern that all of us, I think, have recognised this country is well known for its concern for animals, and we have a long and proud history of supporting animal welfare. I think the world's first animal welfare law was passed here more than 200 years ago in 1822. So there's a long tradition all of us are drawing on when we think about these issues. And this is a government that takes that legacy seriously. Last December we published our animal welfare strategy, which is the most ambitious programme in a generation. Not warm words, a real plan already in motion, with consultations launched on laying hens and lamb welfare. The UK has been at the forefront of animal welfare for generations, and as some honourable and right honourable members have mentioned in their contributions today, notably I think the member for Newcastle under Lyne, and also I think the member for Birmingham Northfield, both had done a little bit of work and discovered that it was actually my right honourable sibling, the member for Liverpool Garston, who introduced the private members' bill that in the end led to the ban on fur farming in this country. And so some of the debates that I've listened to in this chamber this morning have a very, very familiar ring about them from the epic battles that my sister had to try to get her private members' bill on the statute book. It was actually talked out by members of the then Conservative opposition, and it was only after that epic failure that the then Labour government decided it would take forward the ban on fur farming because it had been overwhelmingly demonstrated that this was what the public wanted. So that win wasn't easily gained, and I think people who are thinking about how we change the law and the moral attitude to these things need to understand that private members' bills, not least the ones that honourable and right honourable members who care about these things bring into this House, often have a very, very important legacy in that they persuade governments that they ought to really get on and do what sometimes is controversial but is more often than not right. And so I suspect that the way this is done left that loophole which many honourable members, right honourable members have pointed out today, in that we've banned fur farming and we're the first country to do so when it wasn't popular, and those arguments had to be had right from scratch. And it was such that other countries then recognised the reality of what was actually going on and have moved to ban fur farming in their own countries. But that is still quite a small number of countries that ban it, and it remains actively pursued in many other countries, and we have to recognise that. So while animals can no longer be farmed for their fur in the UK, the import and sale of fur and fur products remains legal, both for farmed animals and those hunted or trapped in the wild. Now, we have heard today that 95% of fur comes from farmed animals, and I think people need to bear that in mind when they think about these issues as well. This is not an issue of trapping wild animals particularly. And we know, if we read our history, particularly in the American continent, that a lot of wild animals were hunted nearly to extinction for their fur in earlier times. But yes, happy to.
Minister for giving way. She says 95% are farmed, 5% are trapped. 100 million estimate, so that's still 5 million animals that are trapped. And these traps not only capture the animals that they're targeting, they have collateral damage with other animals being trapped and killed. And some animals are not killed immediately, and they're left to die a slow, agonising death. And finally, what is stopping this Labour government from taking the lead, as the Labour government did in the 2000s, to ban fur products in this country, from banning the import of fur products?
I was going to get onto that, but I recognise the honourable gentleman's point about wild trapping of animals, which is why it's dealt with quite extensively in the animal welfare strategy that we published just before Christmas, and I hope that he acknowledges that that is the case. I wasn't trying to set one amount of cruelty next to another amount of cruelty, and I think that what we try to do is minimise all cruelty to animals in all contexts, and that's what the government's animal welfare strategy seeks to make progress on. I was just about to say that although some importation of fur is legal, as we've heard today, there are some restrictions. The fur from cats and dogs can never be legally imported into the UK. Seal products can only be imported and placed on the UK market for sale in limited circumstances and subject to strict conditions linked to the rights of indigenous communities. And I recognise, by the way, the cynicism with which some of that was dealt with in contributions from the floor of this chamber, and acknowledge that cynicism may well have some reaction, some connection to reality when it comes to that. But the government recognises the strength of feeling attached to the issue from supporters as well as opponents of the fur trade. I must say I don't hear that much from supporters of the fur trade. I'm sure I will now I've said that. However, we recognise the state of public opinion in this area. We do want to bring together a working group on fur as set out in the government's animal welfare strategy. Part of this will be to seek involvement from both the industry and those who support restrictions, see what we can do ahead of deciding how we cope with, how we deal with this in the future. In the animal welfare strategy, we've committed to publish a summary of responses to the call for evidence on the fur trade in Great Britain, which was conducted in 2021 under the previous government. The call for evidence sought evidence and views from a range of stakeholders on the fur trade in Great Britain, and hearing from the opposition spokesperson, the member for Keighley and Ilkley, did point out how many responses were received to that. And I have to say, it's interesting being chivied along by somebody whose party has been in government for 14 years and made very, very little progress in reality in all of this area. I don't mind being chivied, but I look at where the chivying is coming from and look slightly askance at that. My sister, the Right Honourable Member for Liverpool Garston, took part in a process which got the Labour government to ban fur farming within about 3-4 years of her beginning. We are only less than 2 years into this Labour government and doing a great deal across the animal welfare strategy for all animals in whatever context they're found in. And I just ask for a little bit of patience to see how we can best take all of this forwards. In the animal welfare strategy, we've committed to publish the opinion that DEFRA commissioned from the independent experts Animal Welfare Committee on what constitutes the responsible sourcing of fur. As set out in the committee's work plan, this review will consider available trade data on how much fur is imported to and exported from the UK. It will consider what welfare standards and other safeguards apply to that fur and how well they provide for welfare needs of animals involved. I mean, the evidence that we will seek is what we can then take action about once we have that evidence. I hear people's views of what that evidence is in this debate. We also have to ask those that are involved in the fur trade to see what they say so that we can make appropriate policy once we have the evidence in front of us. I recognise a strong interest in the Animal Welfare Committee's opinion, as well as the summary of responses to the call for evidence from a wide range of interested parties. We will be publishing both the opinion and the summary of responses as soon as we are able. Animal welfare is a global issue, and I take the points that have been made about its impact with trading rules. As set out in our animal welfare strategy, this government is committed to raising standards, not just in the UK, but championing the importance of high animal welfare standards around the world. And we will keep working collaboratively with our international partners, I will in a minute, as well as part of this work to promote robust standards nationally and internationally.
I thank the Minister for giving way. It's really helpful to hear her outline the progress made so far. And I just wonder that given that the SPS statement was made yesterday, I wonder if you can clarify that fur and fur products are not going to form part of the negotiations and they're outside of scope in terms of the SPS?
Well, I'm not going to clarify or not clarify that at the moment because we're still in the middle of negotiations and I don't want to change the way that negotiations are working by commenting on them before we've got final agreements. But I'm quite happy to talk to her when all of that becomes much clearer. I will also say that we'll engage with the EU, which is a major source of fur imported into the UK, as they consider the findings of the recently published European Food Safety Authority scientific opinion on the welfare of animals kept for fur production and the results of the European Commission's 2025 call for evidence on the Fur-Free Europe Citizens Initiative. So I think that there are issues going on there which make this a bit of a moving feast, and we want to make sure that we get it right. We're reviewing the findings of this report and we'll seek views from our working group on the evidence provided by the European Call for Evidence and the review, as well as the Animal Welfare Committee's opinion. This government was elected on a mandate to introduce the most ambitious plans in a generation to improve animal welfare, and this is exactly what we're going to do. We look forward to publishing and considering the findings of the Animal Welfare Committee's opinion and to bringing together interested parties to explore concerns in this important area and the different ways in which these concerns can be addressed to ensure the welfare of animals.
Ruth Jones to wind up.
And as I say, thank you for your chairmanship today. It's been a pleasure to serve under you, and it's been a very coherent and cohesive debate, I think. There haven't been any dissent as far, well, not that I'm aware of anyway. So I want to thank all honourable members for participating in today's debate and bringing their different perspectives to this subject. I want to thank the honourable member for Dewsbury and Batley, York Central, Strangford, Montgomeryshire and Glyndŵr, North Ayrshire and Arran, and Birmingham Northfield, and of course Newcastle under Lyme. I want to thank the members of the people in the public gallery for their ongoing work and persistence in making sure that the animal welfare message goes out across the UK loud and clear, and for educating us so well within this House. I thank the Minister too for her outlining the progress that's been made by the government so far. I appreciate a lot of it is behind the scenes, and I don't envy her persuasive familial discussions, because I'm sure they are going on at all times, and I would encourage her sibling to carry on those persuasive familial discussions, because we know public opinion is clear, the scientific evidence is clear, the economic case is clear. So let's stop the delay and let's get on with the action we need to ban fur and fur products in this country from being imported into this country and end our complicity in this barbaric trade. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
The question is that this House has considered the import and sale of fur and related products, as many as that opinion, yeah. I say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order.